Previously on Star Wars lore, we learned about how the Mandalorian culture was saved by the efforts of Mandalore the Preserver, and how Mandalore the Lesser nearly destroyed them. So, we're going to take off a little further in the future, in around 738 BBY. Now, around this time, culture had been relatively simple. The Mandalorians would fight when provoked, and they had aligned themselves with the Sith many times. But nothing major really happened concerning the Mandalorians. But for some unknown reason, they began expanding their military again. The clan houses swelled with new recruits, and this unnerved the Republic and the Jedi, who had been prospering from a long peace. It was only a matter of time before a brief but destructive conflict broke out between the Mandalorians and the Republic. But this time the Republic was prepared, and quickly disbanded the Mandalorian forces in a targeted assault against the Mandalore system itself, resulting in large portions of the planet Mandalore being turned to a barren white sanded desert, destroying its natural ecosystem. Never before had the Mandalorians been defeated by the Republic with such ease. Many began to question their warrior faith, and from this a new faction emerged. The New Mandalorians, as they called themselves. These New Mandalorians were based on the neighbouring world of Kavala. They sought to do away with the old warrior code and focus on Mandalore's prosperity, a goal that they aimed to achieve through independence and pacifism. They built cube-like cities in the barren wastes that would allow the Mandalorians to habit them. They were skilled inventors and wanted to use their skills to better the galaxy, a noble goal really. The Mandalorians who insisted on carrying out the ancient ways were banished to the nearby moon of Concordia. This group wasn't unchallenged, however. By 200 BBY, there had been multiple Mandalores who had battled and pillaged through the galaxy, and even wiped out an entire species. Again. But they were no match for the new Mandalorians, who had won over the Mandalorian people with the wealth they'd brought to the system. As well as this, the new Mandalores, who warred and pillaged, they just didn't have the support that their predecessors had, and ultimately the new Mandalorians reigned supreme. Of course, there was still the Mandalorians who wanted to stay true to the warrior code, and from this two groups emerged that would engulf many Mandalorians in a bloody civil war. The first of these groups were the True Mandalorians, led by Jaster Maril, who was the official Mandalore of the time. He created the Super Commando Codex, which allowed Mandalorians who wished to stay true to their culture fight as highly paid but honourable mercenaries. The other group, however, was less interested in becoming soldiers for hire, a splinter group that believed war was the destiny of every Mandalorian, a group that wanted to conquer far systems and bring their age-old enemy the Republic to its knees. A splinter group known as Deathwatch. Under a Mandalorian known as Tor Vizsla, these skilled but undisciplined soldiers would strike fear into the hearts of their enemies with their atrocious acts. Whilst the new Mandalorians remained out of the conflict and continued to reform Mandalore, the true Mandalorians and the Deathwatch began a bloody war against one another. Saying that this conflict was galaxy-changing would be a far overstatement though. Although the radical groups were persistently attempting to destroy one another, their numbers were relatively small, meaning those who lived away from the Mandalore system would not be affected. But as with wars, they often spill to other worlds. By 58 BBY, the farming planet of Concord Dawn had become the main playing field for the clash of ideologies. It's here where Jaster Maril and the true Mandalorians found themselves retreating from a conflict with the Deathwatch, when they took refuge in a lawman's farm. Vizsla and the Deathwatch discovered where they were hiding, and brutally killed the lawman and his wife in front of their young son. The son escaped with Jaster, and the true Mandalorians rerouted to a local town that the Deathwatch were preparing to raid. Under cover from high windows and alleyways, the true Mandalorians killed a great deal of Deathwatch, although Tor Vizsla did manage to escape. The boy was then adopted by Jaster. The boy's name? Jango Fett. Yes, Vizsla didn't know that he was killing the descendants of Cassius Fett, the famous Mandalorian who drove the Kaffa people into the sea. Believing that the Deathwatch were wiped out, 6 years later the true Mandalorians were following the Super Commando Codex and were working to rescue local security forces from some poorly armed hostiles. However, the intel that they were given was grossly incorrect, and the hostiles dealt a heavy blow. Jasta ordered his second-in-command, Montrose, to pull back, but he wouldn't. Meanwhile, Jango, a now fully formidable Mandalorian mercenary, trained by his adopted father, went to complete the objective. All until Deathwatch re-emerged. Jango with the other Mandalorians fought against the bulk of the forces, while Montrose and Jasta fought against Vizsla himself. In the battle, Jasta was injured, and Montrose left him to die by Vizsla's hand. He returned to the other true Mandalorians, saying how Jasta would want his second-in-command to take his place as Mandalore. But he didn't count on Jango, who is believed to be dead, turning up with Jasta's body, telling the truth about how Montrose had acted cowardly and left his friend and leader behind. Montrose, surprisingly, was allowed to leave with his life, and Jango was seen as the heir to the title of Mandalore. Yes, Jango Fett was actually Mandalore. Ultimately, under Fett's leadership as Mandalore, the true Mandalorians won some significant victories, considering he didn't have the powers of the Mandalorians of old, who could summon an army at a single call. All until 44 BBY. The Deathwatch was severely crippled after the last few years of warring with the true Mandalorians. They decided that trickery was their best weapon. They turned to the governor of Galadron for help. The governor contracted the true Mandalorians to put down what he called a local insurgency, which they did. However, when Fett returned to collect the pay, the governor had called for the Jedi to help his people, claiming that the true Mandalorians had killed political activists and innocent civilians. Vizsla then revealed himself and attacked Fett, who managed to escape, but by the time he rendezvoused with his troops, it was too late. Jedi, led by Master Dooku, had arrived, demanding the Mandalorians put down their weapons. Needless to say, they didn't. The proud and confused Mandalorians opened fire, and the battle took place, resulting in 11 Jedi being killed, at least 6 of which were struck down by Fett himself with his bare hands, after the death of Miles, one of his closest friends. Ultimately, Fett was apprehended, and the Jedi released him to the governor of Galadron, who quickly sold him into slavery, where he lingered on a spice transport for 7 years, until he escaped and recovered his armor from the same governor. He then tracked down Vizsla, who was ultimately responsible for the Jedi killing his troops. He then slew Vizsla after a lengthy fight, ending the Mandalorian Civil War. The remaining Deathwatch members fled under Basal Chevla, or strategic disappearance. But Fett was still Mandalore. Not that it mattered, though. His followers, the true Mandalorians, were dead. The new Mandalorians were prospering under the new leader, Duchess Satine, and he was scarred from his years of slavery. Fett turned his back on his people and his title of Mandalore. He took to becoming a bounty hunter, following the ways of the true Mandalorians, which led him to the event on Kamino. And that, my friends, is where the Mandalorian story ends for now. Although the Deathwatch do return in the Clone Wars, and the Mandalorians do even start rebuilding their strength after the fall of the Empire, I'm not going to do lore videos on those sort of events because they're kind of spoiler-ridden for the new films. So yeah, I'm going to sort of avoid them. But this series is going to continue back to its bi-weekly status on a Saturday, to my knowledge, or probably a Sunday because I never release videos on time. Yes, so the next video will not be about Mandalorians, it's going to be about something else, so please do put down in the comments below what video you want to learn about in the wonderful world of Star Wars lore. If you do enjoy this series, please do like, comment and subscribe and show your support, As well as that, remember to check out the Fallout series, which also has a very nice sci-fi quirky theme, which should be coming out this Saturday. I do hope that you enjoyed the video. Please do like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.